You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. Tonight's account is from a retired Air Force veteran, mental health therapist, and someone who spent her entire life in the woods. And this episode goes from the pine forest of Texas to the swamps of Louisiana, the back roads of Washington, and the shadows of the Olympic National Forest. What did Kay experience throughout the years? You'll have to listen to her story to find out, so stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Kay today. Kay is an individual. She is a mental health therapist, a retired U.S. Air Force veteran, and an explorer of the wilderness. So it's a pleasure to have Kay on the show today. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Absolutely. We were having a nice chat before the recording started. Sounds like we have a lot of ground to cover. You've really had some interesting experiences over the years, so I want to make sure that you have the time that you need. So, feel free to take us back to where you would like to start with this whole conversation.
Okay, sure. I did make a list so I could kind of try to keep it in timeline in chronological order. So, I'll start from the early 70s. I didn't even know it was anything at the time. I was a child, but I was playing out in my aunt and uncle's yard in Texas, and there's a lot of forest around. It's on a family property that's about 300 acres, and it's pretty forested. We usually have our trees cut down every few years, to try to turn a profit, but the trees were grown at the time. And I was making mud pies outside with my cousins, and they went inside. I stayed out to finish up, and I started hearing some hammering in the woods. And I'm like, okay, who's building something on the family property is my first thought, because it sounded like they were hammering. And it just kept on and kept on. I think my aunt had heard that, and she came running to the door, and she said, "Get in here before the wood boogers get you." And I'm like, what is a wood booger? And she wouldn't answer. She made me go inside. So I went inside, and I'm like, I'm going to be smart. I'm going to ask my dad what a wood booger is. And I did that, and the room got silent, and they looked at me, and I never got an answer. So that was the end of that. I didn't really attribute that to an encounter until more recently listening to your show. That's when I started realizing that maybe that was an encounter when I was really young, probably about 5 or 6. My first encounter that I remember, actually I didn't remember. It was really traumatic for me. Me and my sister were on the neighbor's farm in Louisiana, and we were sleeping. It was a few feet away from the window, maybe about 3 or 4 feet, and they had no curtains, so we're sleeping there, and I wake up and raise up. I'm on the other side of my sister. I raise up and I see Sasquatch in the window staring at me and my sister. My sister was covered up, and I shook her and said, "What is that?" And she said, "It's nothing. Go to sleep." And I laid back down, and I was thinking, why would she say that? And finally, I that's not really a word, but it's kind of funny. I thought, well, she's closer to the window, and she's older than me. She's telling me it's nothing, so I'm just going to accept that and go back to sleep. And that was the end of that encounter, but I blocked that out of my memory for several years until my sister reminded me. And she drew a picture of it. I don't have that picture anywhere that I can find right now, but she drew a picture of what we saw. But yeah, so that was my first encounter, and I had nightmares about that for quite some years. And it's kind of funny because every time I watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer when I was a kid, that reminded me of that and just terrified me. Let's see, the second time, and this one is the first time I remember, it was about 1978 or 79. A friend of mine, I actually posted this one on the Texas Bigfoot Research Center website. Me and my friend, we had fireworks. It was around the 4th of July, and we were popping firecrackers, yelling, and listening to the echoes. in the forest, bouncing back and having a good time shooting. We had some 410 guns. We were shooting that. And anyway, that was during the day. At night, we went to bed and they didn't have air conditioner hooked up yet. So they left the windows open and we were laying in bed. There was a window behind me and a window behind my friend that was staying there. And something came to the window at night. And there's a lot of details to the site. It's probably best if you do go to the website and read it. But something came to the window and it was breathing really heavy. I can't imitate the sound because it was, you could tell the lung capacity was just so much. I froze. I was froze solid in bed. The lady that made the bed tucked the corners of the sheets in so tight, but all I could do was just kind of scooch over really slowly to try to get out of the bed if something busted through the screen. Nothing ever happened, but what ended this encounter was the clock chiming in the other room. It stopped it. It took about 3 minutes for this to happen, and this thing vanished. I looked out the window. I saw nothing. There was dead silence during this event. Also, they had a German Shepherd chained up outside that went under the house while this event was taking place. I know it was not a bear. I don't think there were any bears in Louisiana at this time. So I'm pretty certain this was a Sasquatch at the window. This is the same location as the first encounter when I was watching me and my sister. That was my Louisiana encounters.
A few things about these situations. So they're both in Louisiana. Were they both in the same house then?
No, the person actually had a trailer during the first one. It was like one of those old 1950s trailers that are built out of real thin wood on the walls and single pane windows that were really thin. This thing could have busted through the window if it wanted to. The second, they had put a house on the property, but it was right by where the trailer was. They used the trailer for storage at the time. And yeah, it was really close. And they had a little electric fence around the yard to keep, they have some cows on the property. They put a little electric fence up around the house to keep the cows away from the house. Another thing that made me realize it had to have been a Sasquatch is because the German Shepherd, it was about 9 months old. It was pretty tall and it barked at people. If it was a person, I think it would have barked at them. I don't think it was a wild animal because of the fence. So it had to have been something, I figured, that stepped over that fence to come to the house. And so little couple of clues that I have that it was actually a Sasquatch coming there. I didn't actually see it though. So on the website, it wasn't considered a Class A sighting because of that.
Now, the first one, you had actually seen it in the window, correct?
I did. And I cannot recall exactly what its face looked like. I feel like I didn't remember the sighting for like 30 years until my sister brought it up. My mom made fun of me all the time if I said anything about a monster in the woods. And she would buy toys and make fun of me when she would give me the toys and stuff. So I don't know. I really, yeah.
Sorry,
I feel like those two encounters really caused me a lot of trauma.
Yeah, you didn't ask for that, and
No.
to be made fun of on top of that, and trauma is a real thing. People don't realize what it does to you. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Did you ever?
It's okay. Go ahead.
Did you ever talk, or did it come up with any of the neighbors as well in that area?
When we woke up the next morning, no, not about the first one where it was looking in the window. My sister never talked about it, and she only told me about it in the early 2000s because I had told her about my second encounter where it was at the window breathing through the window. And then she kind of said, well, don't you remember when it was staring at us through the window? And I was like, no. And I said, and then it started coming back to me a little bit. I remember that day we were outside, me and my sister were flying kites, and my kite flew away. The wind was blowing so hard and got lodged in trees in the woods. Um, we were also watching shooting stars at night, and then we finally went to bed probably around 10:30 or 11. And then I assume it was probably around 12 to 1 or 2 or something when it was looking through the window.
One last question about this group. The windows that were in question, how high up off the ground approximately were those?
Good to ask, because I actually went and measured. The one in the trailer was probably around, it wasn't that high. It may have been 4.5 to 5 foot off the ground. So the thing would have been kind of hunched over looking through. And when my sister drew the picture, she drew kind of the outline of the shoulders and just a hump of a head looking through the window. And she said it looked kind of like a caveman a little bit.
Oh, man. Wow. Does she still believe that she had a sighting to this day?
She doesn't talk about it. That's the only time we've ever discussed it. She doesn't want to talk about it.
I get it.
Usually people don't.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Listeners do not understand, I think, how for everything you hear on this show, there are a lot of people that will not go on air, or we get to the time when they're going to be interviewed and they just don't show up. And that is okay. I'm totally fine with that, because a lot of people are very, aware of their livelihood and their jobs and how that could affect it. And so anyone that is able to come on the show, I really do appreciate and never take that for granted that they are able to come on the show. But so all this so far has happened in the 1970s, and
Yes.
So 1978, 1979, what was your age approximately there?
I was around 13.
Gotcha. All right. Well, yeah, feel free to, thank you for answering my questions there. You feel free to continue with your accounts.
Okay. Then I had a counter in Texas. So I went to basic training, and I was going to be stationed in Germany, and I wanted to go to the property before going overseas. So me and my friend, I asked him if he wanted to go hunting. I didn't really want to hunt, but I wanted to go out to the property. But I did take my dad's gun with me. We both went out, and we both had a deer stand to sit in. While I was sitting in the deer stand, it was probably around 5 in the morning. It was about 20 degrees outside. I had all my camouflage on. I noticed something walking out of the woods and then walking along the tree line. And it was at least 6 foot to 7 foot tall. Now, I kind of rubbed my eyes and I'm like, am I really seeing this? I couldn't make out features because it was like a full moon night, but I could see the shape of a body walking in the woods on our family property. This is back on our family property again. And it just kept coming closer and closer. It didn't see me. So I clicked the safety off the gun because, I mean, if it got too close, I didn't know what would happen. So I clicked the safety off the gun. As soon as I did, it started walking backwards and it looked over towards me. Then I guess when it made out what I was, it spun around and ran into the woods. And then I saw a tree shaking like violently. And that kind of made me realize I did see something. I'm physically seeing the tree move. It's no longer just a shadow walking along the side of the trees. So the next morning, I was terrified to come out of the tree stand. But I finally did. My friend came and got me. We went down to look for footprints. We didn't see any footprints, but I could see where it went into the trees. And we went back to check it out to see if it left anything. There was weirdly just a bucket hanging on the tree there, but it was full of pine straw, so I don't know. I think maybe my family had left that up there. But it did run in that area, and it shook that big tree that the bucket was hanging on. We walked down to see where it came out of the trees. And this is really funny because I saw the trail where it came out. It looked no bigger than something a fox might use. I mean, the branches were totally closed in around the trail, but it very low to the ground. You could see where something has been walking in and out. I never would have thought something that large could have come out of that, which was just kind of strange. And yeah, after that, I went over to Germany and spent some time over there. I was stationed over there, and it was kind of boring going into the woods there, other than worrying about bombs that had been dropped during World War II. But yeah, no Sasquatch there. So.
During that time with your hunting buddy there, did that individual did they see anything as well?
No.
Anything like that? Okay.
No, they didn't.
What was the year you would say for that one?
That was 1989.
Okay, 1989.
That was right before I was stationed overseas.
So let's see, that would
December. I don't know the exact date.
So that puts you at around 24-ish?
Let's see. 23, 24, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
That's right.
Well,
let's see.
I just have one or two other questions about that. During the time, the general time when you had that experience, was anything else weird about the woods? Were there any out of place sounds or lack of sounds or smells or anything like that?
There were no sounds. There's a lot of deer footprints, but no, no sounds, no deer that night. No, there was nothing odd about it. It was like 20 degrees, so nothing was moving. It seemed like nothing was moving outside.
Gotcha. And you said you could see the shape of the body, kind of. You couldn't really see details, but were there any, even from the silhouette, were there any details that you remember where it's like, oh, I remember seeing that about it, and that was like, yeah.
Well, it was kind of large, large-chested, kind of slumped over just a little bit as it walked. And then when I clicked the safety, its legs stayed straight, but its body kind of turned. Its upper torso turned towards me as it walked backwards. I mean, it was kind of funny how quickly it walked backwards, I thought. But that's the only thing really that my family's kind of large. Like my dad was really large. But it seemed a little bigger than my dad. That's all I can remember. My dad was like 6'4".
Oh wow, yeah, and so even taller than your dad, because you said it was, could it be 6 to 7 feet tall? That's an interesting detail that you shared as well, because from what we know about the Sasquatch so far is that it cannot turn its head. When it looks to the side, it has to turn its shoulders as well, right? So that totally makes sense that you would have experienced that.
Now, I posted that sighting on BFRO in 2004. And one of the reasons I did that is because I was reading through some of the other sightings and hearing about the tree shaking. I had no idea that was anything at the time. I mean, this is pre-internet when this happened. So, I wasn't aware of tree shaking and some of the wood knocking. I wasn't aware of those things until later on. Which that's part of the reason I'm here, because I've learned a lot from your show, just listening to other people.
That's awesome. I mean, that is one of, it's not the reason that I started the show, but it is a reason that is coming to the forefront, that people are learning stuff from what they're listening to, and it's helping out other people because of that. And that's just really cool. I enjoy that. This area in Texas, we're saying general Texas, but Have you ever looked to see if there's other encounters that are reported in
Well,
maybe the general
well,
region?
oh yeah, yeah. Actually, I think it's Squatch exploitation, the Bigfoot episode on Finding Bigfoot,
Okay.
Squatch exploitation. That's the exact area these things happened. And as a matter of fact, their town hall was in a place called Big Pines Lodge, which is just a few miles away from my family property. And there's really some good staging areas if people wanted to go out and try to make contact with Sasquatch.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at it on a map. It's literally right on Caddo Lake. Yeah,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Yeah, no, that is between Caddo Lake and then further to the west is Jefferson.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Yeah, that makes total sense that you would have that situation right there in that area. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Um,
So my grandmother actually, I skipped over this one, and I didn't really have an encounter, but I went to see my grandmother in 1988. It was before my hunting encounter. Um, we're sitting there, and this is around 6 p.m. I don't know, it's starting to get evening time, and we heard a yell in the woods that sounded like, and I don't want this to sound bad, it sounded like if you were watching the old westerns, like the sounds that the natives or the Indians would make, the yells, but it ended sounding exactly like a crow. And I asked my grandmother, I said, "What is that?" She said, "I don't know, but every evening I take my trash to the edge of the woods and I take a hoe with me because I feel like something's watching me."
my,
I'm pretty sure something was.
my goodness. So what I heard sound like almost like a war cry, and it turned into a crow noise.
Yes.
Oh man.
I had another incident in California actually earlier this year that was similar. It I was coming out. I was traveling and I was in California um, in my trailer, and I left my trailer before sunup. Closed the door, locked it. Then I heard a crow behind me, or an owl behind me. It sounded real deep. I was like, "Cool, there's an owl." And then off in another tree, I heard another owl, but it was like, "Woohoo!" And I just stuck my hand in the air and I said, "You guys are bad." And I just walked to my truck and got in it and took off. I didn't even look. I didn't want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was 2025, you said?
Yes. That was around April of this year.
Is that Northern California or?
It was kind of close to Yosemite, actually. Wasn't too far from that. Let's see. I'm looking at my list here. Most of the other things happened in Washington. I did have something at the end of last summer in Texas. I can talk about that, but there, there's a Superfund site on Caddo Lake. Do you know what that is? Like
I don't actually. Yeah, if you could share what that is.
a Superfund site is like there's different ones in the U.S. Like if the ground has been contaminated by government activity, it could be nuclear. It could be, in this case, around Caddo Lake. It used to be an ammunition plant, and the job of the Superfund site is for them to go and do cleanup before, I guess, returning it to the public. So it's in the process of that right now. And it's laid out like I'm prior military, but it's kind of laid out like what we would call our ammo dump. So there's streets there, they're paved streets. Um, it almost looks like city blocks with no houses on it. I was driving through there and I heard a really large limb break. And I've come over time to learn that's them just saying, "Get out of here." I said, "Okay, I'm leaving," and I drove away. But then when I turned around and came back, I saw one of the trees stuck in the ground upside down. It wasn't very big. It was only about 5 foot tall, but I thought it kind of odd. I did see that. Also, I was trying to go see my land, walking back into the woods, but it's really bad and muddy. I couldn't get back there. And nephew, my nephew's wife, I don't know if she would be considered, but anyway, my nephew's wife was walking with me back there, and she was telling me about an event her husband had where he was followed out of the woods. And when he went back the next day, a perfect circle was left in like sticks in the area where he heard the noise. Well, she was walking with me this day, and I said, yeah, I've seen something back here. I was telling her about that, about the hunting incident. And as we came back, one of her chickens had been snatched up, and the feathers were left in a perfect circle. And it was really odd. I tried to contact my cousin after that, and she didn't talk to me. So they don't talk about this stuff. So I think maybe she got upset that I had mentioned anything about it. It probably scared the poor girl.
Oh, absolutely.
And to see her chicken snatched, it's probably not good. And yeah, I was hoping to move back on my property, but
that area just has so much. It has a rich history of Bigfoot activity in the Caddo Lake area for sure. Mm-hmm. Your grandma in 1988, you were talking about, did she ever share did she ever have any sightings in that area, or just like she was ready for something with that garden hoe just in case?
She was just ready to protect herself. She wouldn't talk about it. My dad has told me stories about things that happened, though. I can discuss that if you would like.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's anything that you feel comfortable sharing. It's okay. Definitely go ahead.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I was doing a bio on my dad when I was in middle school, and he started telling me about. I think one of the questions I asked him, the scariest moments of his life, and he told me about being followed out of the woods on the family property. What else did he tell me? Oh, he would see things out of the window at night, like going to the family. It was a pond out there. They also had a barn. It would go to the barn sometimes. He said he'd always see the thing going between the barn and the pond at night through his window. But that's the only thing he shared with that. He did tell me about my cousins. They used to live in the old family house on the property. And there was a huge door. This is like a house that was built in the 20s or 30s, and they had a huge front door. They believed the front door represented the family. You have a fabulous front door. So they had a huge one with glass over the top of it. And my aunt and uncle saw the top of something's head over the glass, and this is probably at least 7 foot up. They see the top of something's head and something wiggled the door handle. Also, my cousin was trying to get rid of some raccoons that were eating the feed in the barn. So he slept up in the loft one night, and this thing came in the barn with him. That's all I heard from my dad about it, though.
Wow.
That would be interesting.
That's incredible. So you're saying that it came in the barn with him per his account?
Yes.
Whew. Oh man. That is wild. Have you ever talked to that cousin directly about that?
No. When I was a little kid, he was already in his 20s.
Sure.
And he moved off. I never really got to meet him much.
Gotcha. So all these accounts on the same property, what years would this span? Are we talking 40, 50 years? Or
I would think, well, my dad was born in 1940, so probably in the 40s started. And then, last year, I don't know. You can consider it a sighting or Bigfoot related if you want to say the chicken being snatched up was really odd. But yeah, so
wow, so
for quite some time.
Really, it could go. We're talking about potentially 80 years if we're going 40s to last year, but
yes,
or roundabout there. Wow, so that's pretty fascinating. And that is.
And I'm sure that properties are around there also experience this stuff too. It's
Oh,
just
without a doubt.
people, they're tight-lipped about it.
They really are.
They really are.
It's a thing, I experienced that when I got into the field. When I went out in Oregon and I was driving through these small mountain towns, people do not want to talk. They want you out of there, and which is absolutely fine. Probably didn't help that I had California rental plates on too.
Oh.
Anyways, so you were saying that you also had some interesting things happen in Washington as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I think this is, the very first one, I was with my daughter, and this could have been a hoax. And I will admit if something could be a hoax. We were driving from Forks to the Hoh Rainforest. So it was a long road. I guess it's about 20 miles of forest before you get to the Hoh Rainforest. And that's HOH if you're ever interested in it. It's like one of the only rainforests in America. So we wanted to go see it. We're driving there. Unfortunately, the Olympic Peninsula is a lot bigger than you expect. So it took us a long time. It was already dark when we got there. We were driving along and we came up to a curve in the road, and my headlights were shining into the woods, and we saw a figure that was brown from head to toe. It jumped against a tree, like it was trying to hide by jumping against the tree. I said, "Did you see that?" to my daughter, and she said, "Yeah, it's a guy in a brown coat, brown pants, hiding." And this is in July. So I said, "You think it was a hoax?" And she said, "Yeah, it was somebody dressed up." So, maybe it was a hoax, but it's really kind of odd. And there was not a lot of cars on the road. Yeah, it was kind of a weird encounter.
That really that's one of those things where, it makes you wonder, because it's like, it could be a guy that's just messing with people, or,
Right?
you could have actually seen something. What approximate year did that take place in?
This was like 2017.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then at around 2020, me and my friend were around Darrington, and we were traveling the forest road. I had a Jeep, and we went down this road. It was starting to get more narrow, so we found a turnout, and we were turning back, but we had to do like a 5-point turn. And I put it in reverse and backed up, just about ready to go straight, but I needed to back up a couple more times. So I put it in reverse, and I'm watching the camera, and something passes behind the camera. I could only see it look like from the waist to the knee down, but something passed by the camera, and I told my friend, I said, "Something's behind us." I moved forward, and then I put it in reverse again, and I backed up, and then she started screaming at me because she saw it too. And yeah, and she's willing to probably talk to you if you wanted, but I mean, we couldn't definitively say that this was a Sasquatch, but it was really weird. The only thing I could think it could be is maybe a large bird flapping its wings at kind of an angle that a leg is, but I don't know. I don't think it was anybody hoaxing us. There's no cars up there or anything.
Sure.
So I was trying to get some photos. I do photography. I think we talked about that before, before we started recording. And I was trying to get pictures of, what's the name of the peak? Glacier Peak, which is kind of hidden. It's hard to really see Glacier Peak unless you want to hike. And I do drone photography, so I was flying my drone trying to get some photos of Glacier Peak at the time.
So this friend that you had in the car with you, how did she get a look at it? Was it also in the backup camera, or was it?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And I have a habit when something scares me like that, I don't even want to know. I just move forward. So I didn't look in my rearview mirror. I didn't want to see. I just wanted to get out of there. So
Absolutely. That was going to kind of be my follow up, is that after that happened, then did you get out of there as quick as you can, or?
yes,
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
and we laughed about it, of course, afterwards. She scared the living daylights out of me by screaming in my ear about it. And, it doesn't startle me as much when I see these things anymore, but for other people it does. And yeah, I, my perception of this was a juvenile Sasquatch trying to show off. My next sighting was really cool, and I feel like I was communicating with them on this sighting. This was in 2021. It's a lake on the peninsula. I won't disclose the location. Um, I got to the site, and I had just gotten a Starlink internet satellite um, back then, and I was trying it out. So I stopped. It was kind of a clearing, but there was a lot of brush on the side of the trees, and there was a Douglas fir tree. I wanted to take some photos of the Douglas fir tree, but I stopped, and when I got out to set up the Starlink, I heard some rustling around in the brush, and I started talking to it. I said, "I'm just here to take pictures of the tree over here and to test my equipment out." I told it that. I heard no other sounds for a while. But I flew my drone. I took some pictures of the Douglas fir. But then when I started flying back, I noticed that there's snow still on top of the mountains and the lake in the foreground. So I was like, oh, that would make a lovely photo. So I turned my drone and started flying over there, and then I heard some stomping on the ground. It's like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, okay, I will bring it back. So I brought my drone back, and it stopped. I heard nothing else the whole time I was there. So I feel they do have some level or ability to communicate and understand us. In the brush, let me tell you about the brush. It's kind of about 6 foot tall. It's kind of it almost looks like reeds. It's like a tan color. In Washington State, if you have a clearing, it seems like the brush just gets really out of hand and tall. I feel like they hide in that stuff. It seems. And that comes into play in another encounter I had in a few minutes. But let's see. I did go to Lake Quinault, and I had a really weird encounter. Um, you can't even call it an encounter, but something strange happened. I wanted to see how tall the Douglas fir trees there. They're like the tallest, some of the tallest in the nation, like 300 feet tall. So I wanted to take my drone and measure the height of the tree. So I saw one in the forest, so I parked on the side of the road and went in, and I noticed there was a stump near there that was really large. A large tree had been cut down there, and there was some brush around it and everything. But this stump was big enough to park a large truck on. It was pretty good size. Well, anyway, I'm flying my drone up to the top of the tree. It was 200 something feet. Then I landed the drone, and then in my head, I had a clear thought: get out of here. And almost like I could hear it. It was that clear in my head. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just taking photos. And then I heard, what's that? I said, it's just a drone. And I said it verbally, it's just a drone. And then I said, I was measuring the tree, just looking at the tree. And they said, okay, go ahead. And I said, like, they were giving me permission to fly it again. And I'm like, no, I'm leaving. I don't know about mind speak or anything like that. I've not really subscribed to that, but that was really odd to have those feelings. I don't know if it was just a hair on the back of the neck, like you're in danger, leave right now. But then when they realized what I was doing, they felt comfortable with that. That was I don't know. That's the weirdest encounter that I've had, and that was around Lake Quinault. I have never seen anything there, but that was that was very startling to me. Then my last encounter, actually. Now, let me tell you the other one. I think it was in 2022. I was driving between Mount St. Helens and, let's see, I wrote down the road number. I can tell you the actual forest road number. I was driving between or behind Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams. I was driving between that, going from the north side to the south side on some of the forest roads. And I actually camped in there overnight. But when I stopped, I was trying to get some pictures of the mountain. This was still during the daytime, and I heard a very large limb snap. The limb must have been at least 2 inches thick because it's a very hefty snap. And I knew that it was, well, I felt it was Sasquatch telling me to leave and move on. And I said, okay, I'm leaving. And then it started coming down the hill towards me. And then I do sometimes I carry a firearm. I grabbed the firearm and then it stopped. And that was the last I had there. I did camp overnight out there afterwards. That was around Ape Canyon area.
Oh wow! So you were camping around the Ape Canyon area?
Yes.
Wow.
And it's funny, I do all these things alone because I do most of these things alone because when I go out with someone and I'm trying to take photos and stuff, I feel like I'm also, um, sometimes I have to watch out for them. I spent a lot of time in the woods from when I was a child to now, and sometimes people do things that I'm like, hey, don't go over there. There, mountain lions and things like that. So being mindful of things. I mean, you wouldn't go in the ocean if there's great whites swimming there. So you got to be careful in the forest too. There's things out there that can harm you.
Oh, 100%. And I think that's an important thing to bring up is, people are going to go out looking for Bigfoot in these areas. These areas are very unforgiving, and you got to be, worst case scenario, prepared for other predators as well. Like there are cougars out there, and they can really come right after you and not care. So you have to be prepared for that. So I'm glad that, you are prepared and you have your, military background. So definitely are prepared with the right gear. So that is good to hear.
I try to, but I do always end up because people have asked to go out with me. But when I usually go out and when I was driving my Jeep, I drive some pretty narrow roads on some shelf roads, and there's a lot of people that don't want to do that. So yeah, I'm try to be mindful of if I go with someone who's not going to want to do these things, that it's going to really prevent me from getting the photos and things that I want. So I try to let people know where I'm going, but sometimes I take a turn that I'm not supposed to. By the way, the limb break I got at the Superfund site was approximately, it sounded like a 2-inch limb. So I feel like if you hear a good hefty limb break, then there's a chance it could be Sasquatch. I was listening to your show this morning and I heard, that they like music. I don't know what episode it was, but if you play rock and roll, they might leave you alone. Well, I tried that before. That didn't work. I played Highway to Hell by, maybe I can't say that, but by a group. And something was coming towards me when I'm playing that. So I'm like, okay, I turned it up a little louder, but it still was coming. So I turned it off and like that didn't work. So I don't know if music is the way to keep the thing away from you.
It's a really interesting topic that does get brought up every once in a while. And that's interesting that that particular song had that effect there. So a lot of people think it might have to do with the beat of the song. Henry Franzoni used to use the song Bolero because the type of beat it had was supposedly very effective in bringing in the Sasquatch. So take that for entertainment uses only. But that does come up on the show every once in a while.
What I've been doing lately is not trying music, but talking to the forest. And as a therapist, doing forest bathing, which is just being present in the moment in the forest. It's very relaxing and being mindful of the things you're doing. I think that is communicating a lot to the Sasquatch when you go out and they see you not cutting down a tree or with a firearm on your side. They, they, I don't know, I guess respect that some, and probably more likely to have a sighting if you are out there and actually conversing with the forest.
Okay, that is something that I did try when I was out in the woods in Oak Ridge this time down in Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, I've never tried this. I just want to try it. And I was in an area up there, and I said, what did I say? If you're here, can you let me know? And I would say a few seconds afterwards, about maybe 30 yards into the woods, heard a, triple knock. I was like, oh, that's weird. That's really weird. So I was like, I'm going to try it again. Did the same thing again where I actually said it out loud. And then there was return knocks a few seconds later. Very, very strange. But it might be something I start to do more myself.
Yeah, that would be great. Let's see, I have one more sighting, and I think it was the most meaningful sighting that I've ever had. It was my last one, and it was in the Olympic National Forest. And I went and I was going to take some pictures of some lichen. I saw some lichen on the ground. It's like in some places on the Olympic Peninsula, the lichen just blankets the ground like a carpet. And if you ever were able to go out and walk barefooted on it or anything like that, it's amazing. It's like a shag carpet. So I was trying to get out and take pictures of that, but then I noticed the footprint. It could have just been a person's footprint. It was a pretty large one, probably about 15 inches long, and I took a photo of it. I went to the forest. I saw that. I was taking some pictures, and I started telling Sasquatch or talking to the forest, saying, I want to protect you. I feel I've seen some of the damage from clear cutting, how it just drains the moisture out of the land. When I would be driving on Mount Rainier where they clear cut, you could just see the water just pouring out from the roots. And, I was talking to the forest saying, I'm sorry we cut all your trees down. And, I shouldn't have, I guess, apologize for that, but I do realize that we try to turn a profit from things. And I was just explaining that and took my photos. Then I got in my truck and I'm starting to drive away. And I look over to the right and I can see the mountains between the trees. But from a huge rock there, I see a Sasquatch pop up. He popped his head up and he was like, his fur was kind of gray color and his skin was tan. And he was doing like a push-up position. Like he had his arms out to his side, pushing himself up. His head was kind of blocky looking, kind of square shaped, but he had lichen on his head and lichen on his shoulder. And the lichen was falling off as he was coming up. And I looked at him for about 2 seconds, and I was already starting to move in my truck. So I looked ahead to see where I was to make sure I was on the road, and I looked back again, and it was gone. Afterwards, I'm driving down the road for a couple of miles, and I come up to a place where there's a bunch of birch trees, and they kind of cover the forest roads, make it almost look like a tunnel. And I wanted to get some photos of that, so I stopped my truck, and as soon as I did, a deer about a quarter mile away up ahead came out of the woods, turned around, and looked back in the woods like it wanted to go back in there, but it was scared to. Well, I kind of got a sense that it had followed me. So I took my drone, and a lot of the brush was back there. It was kind of high, like 6 foot tall, kind of like the brush I told you about in that other encounter where I was communicating with them. Well, I took my drone and I flew it over. I was going to make sure there was none in there before I was taking photos. I didn't want anything to pop out on me. So I was flying it over. The deer was still standing there looking into the woods like it wanted to go back out in the woods. I think maybe it had a fawn in there or something. Well, it started coming towards me. The deer was just walking towards me, and it got real close, and I've seen what deer can do when they rear up and hit you with their hooves. So I grabbed a hunting knife and I pointed and I pointed and I said, go. I was telling it, get away. And so it walked back to where it came out of the woods, looked at the woods, then it turned around and went the other side of the road. Um, and I'm like, okay, I'm leaving. So I got in my truck, I took off, and I felt like it was following me in the woods as I was driving. I just kept going and got out of there. So, which is really odd because that meant it would have been running through the woods at like 20 miles an hour.
Really, this has affected your entire life, going back to when you were a very young child, and you finally are able to, have that sighting. How did you feel during that sighting and right after it? How did that affect you emotionally?
That I don't know. It's like I kind of felt like it was trying to communicate with me because the thing is I was taking pictures of the lichen, and as I look over and I see this thing come up with lichen falling off of it, I think it was acknowledging the fact that that's what I was doing, and it was allowing me to see it. I felt like it was intentional on its part, and typically they do. I think if you see them, it's on their terms usually. I think I've gotten a drop on them before, but it's typically they're allowing you to see it. Like when I had a gun in my hand, I think I got the drop on it. It didn't know I was there. But normally they can be standing just a few feet off the trail and you walk beside them and you won't even know they're there.
Hmm.
They usually hide in the weeds or the reeds. And in Louisiana and Texas around Caddo Lake, there's a lot of longleaf pines. And sometimes you can drive along, and if you see a dead pine tree that's tan with a bunch of tan long leaves on it, it looks like fur. So, I mean, they can easily hide in that stuff, and you won't even know they're there.
Interesting. I know that a lot of people will have really different responses after they have that first sighting, and it goes from, man, I want to have a sighting again, or now I know they're real and I can't go back into the woods and I never want to see that again. Where would you put yourself on, was it more closer to the let's have another sighting, or more close to like, yeah, this has totally freaked me out?
I mean, I'll still go in the forest, but here's what I typically do, and my friends have commented. It's like I usually don't leave my truck too far away. So my friends asked me to do a several day hike, and I'm like, I don't know about that. But if you want to go in my Jeep to some fabulous places, I'm fine with that because I can get in it and take off. And, if it wants to come and pound on my vehicle or whatever, then we'll take care of that incident when it happens. If I carry a firearm, I read the Daniel Boone account and I would do the same that he did, where shooting it in the face.
Yeah, I think that, the way that you view things is a good middle ground, where if it happens where you have to protect yourself, you are more than able to do so and able to do that. But it's not a thing where you are actively going out into the woods and you're like, okay, I'm going to take this out and, put it in a museum. No, we're not going to do that. Yeah. But
no, I don't advocate for killing of one. I mean, do we really need to kill one to prove it's there? Can we do it a different way? I think we can, it just takes willingness to lower your guard to go out and speak to this thing, to the forest. If you communicate your intent and be truthful about it, I think it will show itself. I will also mention the fire was I have kind of developed a theory even before this that maybe their fur is either translucent or potentially can change color, like an octopus can change color or other animals can do so uh, to confuse our vision. I think it's very possible that that's because the fur looked kind of odd to me. It was kind of a gray color, but almost like a translucent gray.
That is a really interesting. I think that the normal human does not realize how incredible even just the animals of this world are and what they can do. For example, I just learned about a new frog the other day on National Geographic called I think glass frog. And what it does is it takes almost all of its blood and puts it into its liver so that it becomes almost translucent to hide from predators. Crazy stuff, right?
Hmm.
So
I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It's you check it out. It's a wild one. But that being said, as you mentioned, like the octopus, there are so many things that are in the natural world that can do weird stuff. I don't think it's out of the question that that Bigfoot can do some weird stuff to hide as well. I don't know. Maybe someday we'll be able to figure that out for sure. But
yeah, I hope so.
Absolutely.
Let's see. I do have my BFR sighting is the sighting number is 8107.
Okay.
If you're ever interested, I'm also trying to find the forest roads that I wrote those down in case someone ever wants to go. I mean, if they snap limbs on me, I'll give their location away. Oh, there we go. The road. Okay. So Forest Road 25, and that goes between Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams. It's some of the most remote areas that you're going to find in the U.S.
How long does it take to make that trip across from Mount St. Helens to Adams on that road?
Let's see. I started probably around noon and didn't finish until the next morning. So I stayed overnight. And I went from there down to the Lahara viewpoint. There's actually a nice area there. And that's really close to Ape Canyon. And also Ape Cave is near there too. Which I read about Ape Cave. It's, from what I read in the past, it was like named after a Boy Scout troop. And I'm like, yeah, but why were the Boy Scouts named Ape? What was that?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it kind of blows a hole in that story. But the place where I think would really make, if you can get in there, a good staging area in Texas is the Longhorn Army Ammo Plant. You've got a great Star Ranch is right on Caddo Lake. With just be careful if you go out there. Don't steal the moss. If people decide to go to Star Ranch, don't steal the moss from the trees. Once you tear it off to take home, it doesn't replace that quickly. So there's some beautiful moss on the trees out there, and I think that also helps them hide too.
Now, is that an area that's open to the public, or?
It is, yes.
Oh, okay, it is.
Nobody goes out there either, which I think that's why it's been kept so beautiful. It is through the Army ammo plant, and they could close the gates eventually, if people started destroying the stuff. But yeah, it's a really large area. Nobody goes in there. It's very kind of gives you a remote feeling, and you do have lake access there too, like if you wanted to kayak or whatnot.
That's pretty cool. Something definitely to check out. As always, any area that's talked about on the show, do your due diligence to check it out before you just go, and be prepared for anything. Really, make sure you have stuff with you.
There's a lot of bogs back there too. Yes.
Gotcha.
A lot of bogs.
Okay, you have had some just incredible stuff happen over the years, and it's cool how you've been able to check out Bigfoot activity in different areas of the U.S. Would you say that there's a part of the U.S. that you've been focusing on that probably has a better chance of having Bigfoot activity, or has it been pretty much steady in all the different areas?
No, I've not really been focusing on finding Sasquatch. I I would think the area I told you about, like if you did want to go and do to search as maybe a team or something, the Star Ranch area. But what I've noticed is like different areas, you've got different attitudes from these things. Um, like Louisiana, you're going to have a little more aggressive nature from them. They're a little more elusive. They don't want to be seen. And they're a little smaller too. The ones in Washington, the ones especially on the peninsula, are very respectful of your space. And I think if somebody, I think those two areas are probably the best. Caddo Lake area, from what I've seen, I would go there, or Washington, the Olympics. Go to the Olympic National Park. I've never really felt that they were in the park itself, maybe on the corners, because I'm
Mm.
sure it's safer there for them. You can go in the Olympic National Park and the deer will just come up right up. They will eat out of your hand if you wanted them to, but I would caution against that. They're like mule deer. Um, so just be careful. A girl 2 weeks ago was attacked by a cougar up there. Um, I actually was going to the national park that day, and as soon as I got there, they closed the gates because the girl was attacked.
Oh my
And
goodness.
she did survive. That was like 2 weeks ago. It's been all over the news here.
Oh wow. Oof. You always got to be prepared. You never know what you're going to run into out there. Um, okay, it's been a enjoyable conversation. I want to make sure that you were able to talk about everything that you had come to the show today with.
Just about. I did want to touch on like the trauma that this can induce and cause. Like, I
Sure.
used to have nightmares for this. If you do therapy, speaking to a therapist about this can be important. It can help you work through the traumas of this. Um, I've had a therapist where I mentioned um, that I've seen this, and they wanted to refer me to a shaman, which I refused. So it is possible to switch therapists if if you really need to speak about these things. Um, Switch to a therapist that's comfortable talking about this. I do believe that people don't want to talk about it because they don't really want to come to the realization that there's something that scary out in the forest, because to a lot of people this is a monster. But if you can think of it more as there's a grizzly bear, they're dangerous also, but we can survive this planet with grizzly bears. We just have to be mindful of that. Do your due diligence before going out. Make sure you take measures to protect yourself and be comfortable in the wilderness and not get lost. Let people know where you're going. Those things are important. Um, I also, if people are having problems around their house, there's things you could probably do to get Sasquatch away from your house. And I would say if you can create like a fire break or cut some trees from around your house to move that out a little further. Maybe they will stop hitting on your house or whatnot. I would also let them know before you cut them, you're doing this because of them. That way they know if they continue to do it, it's more could get cut. So just for them to be aware, because they do have a level of communication that we can communicate that to them. Cameras are always good if you want to put cameras in your window and whatnot. That can also help keep them away.
And are you talking about game cameras specifically?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
I do believe they can see infrared light. I mean, you can see infrared light if you hold your iPhone up and look at something in the camera. You can see the infrared light on your camera. It's not a far stretch for an animal to have eyesight good enough to see that wavelength of light. Just like an eagle can see a lot better than we can. I do believe they can see better than we can.
Mm.
So if you put gamer cameras up, I don't think it's going to do anything.
Gotcha.
It might keep them out of that spot. I guess if you maybe do it on the corner of your house, they might stay away from that area because they don't want to be on the camera.
Thank you for coming on the show. And I have a quick question for you after we stop recording.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Just wanted to take a minute to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Kay's story is one of those rare encounters that stay with you, not just because of what she saw, but because of how deeply it's marked her entire life. So huge thanks to Kay for her courage in sharing her memories from childhood fear in Louisiana to the haunting silence of the Washington woods and to the moment she locked eyes with something that shook her to the core. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes, and share this one with a friend who's into Bigfoot, the paranormal, or just a good old-fashioned mystery. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please make sure you're following the show there. And if you'd be willing to leave us a 5-star positive review, it really helps more people find us. Now, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot encounter, whether in Texas, Louisiana, Washington, or anywhere else in the world, I'd love to hear from you. So please send me an email at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's talk about it. If you haven't seen the new membership community yet, you can go over to bigfootsocietypodcast.com and check the members login area. That's where you can find ad-free early release episodes, members only episodes every week, and much, much more fun. So thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. And until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there, and see you in the woods.